Growing up, my mom was the #1 advocate of the thank you note. Every gift and every favor demanded a thank you note, a handwritten thank you note. My parents taught us to be immensely grateful for every last thing we had, and to acknowledge that not a thing we gained in life did we gain by ourselves. So, with this piece of motherly wisdom in mind, ever since my first semester of freshman year, I've kept a running list of everyone I want to write a thank you note to when I graduate. And some of the people were obvious. The admission staff, for example, for taking a chance on an artsy, financially needy girl from a tiny South Florida charter school who did not fill out their application even remotely correctly. Others were just necessary. The good people of Duke who make sure I have coffee every morning, and the professor who always asks how my little sister's doing, and my favorite bus driver who likes to discuss British politics and has never once pulled away while I am running after a C2. However, this thank you letter to you is different. This is the big one, the almost impossible thank you. Because what you've given me and so many other students is a truly impossible gift. Impossible to summarize, to comprehend, to repay. It's a gift that's fulfilled what so many of us thought would be an impossible dream. But this is the thank you letter I've been writing in my head for the past 3 years. Every morning when I walk through the Duke Gardens, enjoying the North Carolina sunshine and the quiet, I'm writing this letter. And every time I buy a meal on Food Points and I don't have to feel anxious about the cost, I'm writing this letter. And every time I sit in the Duke Library reading through just ridiculously old, obscure documents for my thesis, I'm writing this letter. And now that I stand here in front of you, actually able to thank you, the magnitude and the impossibility of the task really hits home. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the place that you love with me. Your generosity has allowed me experiences and opportunities beyond what me or my family could have ever imagined would be possible, opportunities large and small and extraordinary. I came to Duke 3 years ago, scared out of my mind. As one of the first students from my high school to go out of state for college and the first member of my family to go straight to university, I had no frame of reference for what this place would be like. My family was able to come for a Blue Devil Days event, and it was great. It was really great, but for some reason, the #1 thing my mom took away from the weekend was how impeccably dressed everyone on this campus was. And in particular, a young man she saw waltzing around the Bryan Center in what she describes as shoes with gold buckles. And Gold Buckle Shoe Boy came to represent every fear my mom had about me coming to this place, that the people would be elitist and unrelatable, and that I would feel alienated, and that the personal backgrounds of myself and my peers would be so vastly different that we'd never find a mutual understanding. And these were the fears that I brought with me as a freshman, and these are the fears that have been dispelled almost every day since. In the first week I was at Duke, one of my biggest thrills was joining the marching band and getting to practice on a real green grass field and play in a real football stadium. I went to high school in a building that just a year prior had been a shopping mall and therefore definitely didn't have any athletics fields. So our 20-person marching band marched around a 5-story parking garage or occasionally on a field that we constructed from masking tape and old canvas billboards. So, first football game of freshman year, we played for the Devil Walk, which is where the team and the band and the cheerleaders walk from the Duke Chapel to the stadium. And there were alumni just lining the sidewalks, families and children and grandparents all wearing Duke blue. And I remember thinking that this was just about the coolest thing I had ever seen. This community and the sense of pride and love for their school, and that now I was a part of this tradition and this history, and that many of the people standing on the sidewalk were the reason I got to be a part of this. 3 years later, I still smile uncontrollably every time I walk into Wall Spade and think about how far Duke has allowed me to come. and that I don't have to march on a field made out of masking tape. That's really great, too. Some of the experiences I've had since coming here still seem unreal to me. Since I've been at Duke, I've been able to study abroad 3 times, it's a lot, and participate in Duke Engage. Growing up, I never even considered that I might get to travel abroad one day, because it just seemed too far-fetched. I mean, you know, people like us didn't get a chance to do things like that. No, people like us had bills to pay. But you allowed me to do it. I studied history in Oxford, art in Venice, politics in Glasgow, and worked with migrant and refugee communities in Dublin, all with Duke's aid. While coming to Duke showed me the world outside my community, studying abroad showed me the world, its challenges and its perspectives and its beauty, and it has brought inexpressible joy and learning to my life. One of the most important things I've learned from Duke is that while my background may be different than that of my peers, that this isn't a burden and it can really be an asset. My academic pursuits at Duke have been greatly shaped by my personal history and the community I come from. I've spent my time here as a history public policy double major, focusing on social policy, particularly surrounding issues of education and immigration. After spending many years in public and charter schools, serving often very challenging student populations, I've been able to donate my time in the Durham schools teaching art and music. Last semester, through the Center for Child and Family Policy, I was able to do an independent study with the Durham School Board, where we looked at how arts resources are distributed throughout Durham schools. And I've also seen how my personal experiences can contribute to a more well-rounded classroom. Last year for an education class, I wrote a paper about the kind of systematic challenges that I encountered in my 7 years at a startup charter school. And the paper ended up being added to the required readings of the course. After spending my entire life in a community made up heavily of immigrants, Duke helped me find an academic passion for immigration policy and reform, particularly the issue of immigration detention. I won the 2011 Duke Human Rights Center Prize for my research on a Miami immigration detention center, which is an issue deeply relevant to my community. This past summer, I was able to go to Dublin through Duke Engage, where I worked on a conference framing migration in Ireland as a human rights issue. And I just found out this week the Keenan Institute's going to make it possible for me to go back to attend this conference in November, so could not be more excited about that. And now in my last year, I'm working on my thesis about the history and privatization of U.S. immigration detention, and I'm working with a brilliant and supportive professor, and I'm looking for ways to channel these passions into a career. I think that's one of the really, really special things about Duke. You know, once you find something you care about, there are virtually a million ways to pursue it. Duke has taught me many things, and it's challenged many of my views. But this I know for certain. When you give to support me and students like me, you're not just benefiting us, you're benefiting Duke University as a whole and everything it represents. It's taken me 3 years to fully realize what you and Duke have long known, that fostering diversity in all its forms, including socioeconomic, benefits absolutely everyone. And not because I have something inherently spectacular to contribute to this place, but because college is, at its core, a place where we learn from others and their experiences. The experiences that have shaped me as a person are distinctly different from the experiences that have shaped some of my more socioeconomically privileged peers. But neither of us can fully understand the world we'll enter post-graduation without meeting and learning from each other. I remember once leaving a public policy class in my freshman year, just extremely upset after hearing a classmate rant just a little too cavalierly about scrapping all the nation's welfare programs. And I wrote him off as a jerk. You know, I said, this kid is completely disconnected from reality. But I talked to him later, and I got to know him, and I realized he'd never actually met someone on welfare. That just wasn't his reality. But Duke allows us to expand the realities we know. And of course, he and I had a lot to learn from each other. It's really difficult to make effective policy about welfare if you've never met someone on welfare. You can't understand the problems facing rural America if you only know people from cities. And you really cannot judge people wearing gold buckle shoes until you get to meet the people wearing gold buckle shoes. And that is why financial aid makes such a difference in the lives of all students. I came into Duke thinking that I would constantly be learning from and trying to keep up with my brilliant classmates. But after 3 years here, I've learned that I'm not just here to learn, but that I have something to say, to contribute. My viewpoint is valuable, and the viewpoints of people from my circumstances are valuable. Learning this has been more empowering than I can say. And you convey this message of investment and compassion and confidence every time you give to support financial aid. To tell high school seniors who are also scared out of their minds, who questioned if they'd even go to college, let alone go to Duke, that they're wanted here, and that this university and its alumni believe in them enough to give them this gift. That is an incredibly, incredibly powerful thing. As cliched as it sounds, Duke has given me a voice, and you have given me a voice. Your generosity has redefined the course of my life, and there is not a single day that goes by that I don't feel like the luckiest person in the world for having been given the opportunity to go to school here. Thank you so much.